Bro, the stuff that they put on the internet about Freemasonry, ridiculous.
What's that new movie? Killers of the Flower Moon.
Yeah, I'll show everybody.
Remove the book. Sorry. All right, brother. Stand up. Stand up. Elbows on the table. I am a 32nd degree Mason. I am imbued with confidence, trust, and responsibility, among other things.
Yes, sir.
You know what that is?
No, sir.
In one of the opening scenes, obviously, they're utilizing a paddle to punish one of, obviously, he's a member.
Mm-hmm.
Robert De Niro announces himself as a 32nd degree Mason, which both of us are, in the northern jurisdiction for our out-of-state listeners. At what point is it Masonry's job to defend itself from something like that? And it's one thing if it's regular guys, but these are Hollywood's finest.
This is the Fourth Part Podcast, a podcast made by Freemasons to be enjoyed by all. The opinions of the hosts and the guests are their own and do not reflect any Grand Lodge stance or opinion. And now here are your hosts, the grumpiest past master and the OG Danielson. Welcome to Season 2 of the Fourth Part Podcast. I'm your host, the grumpiest past master, and with me is my co-host,
The OG Danielson.
And welcome back. Great. We're coming into the new year. It is, right now, it's Christmas time at the time of this filming. And happy holidays. Merry Christmas to everybody. And you excited? I know you're halfway through your Masonic year. Are you, how's your year going?
So far, the year's going great. I've had a lot of support from the brothers. There's been a smooth transition. My predecessor left me the lodge in good health. So I really haven't had to worry about too many things that were on the table. I feel now it's just to continue his progress and then, form some identity with that. But I feel one of the things that as master you get kind of wrapped up in is establishing an identity and leaving your legacy as opposed to continuing progress for the lodge itself.
Mm-hmm.
And with that comes legacy, but there has to be a smooth transition from master to master in order to continue an upward trend of progress.
All right, that's why I kind of want to ask about how your year is going, because really you are the steward of protecting the lodge. The worshipful master, he's in charge of running the lodge for the year, and he is the steward of protecting his lodge for that year. That kind of goes back to what we were just saying about these movies and social medias and conspiracy theorists and all that kind of stuff, bringing up the most ridiculous things that don't happen in Masonry. And I think in general, outside of the few brothers here or there that have a voice on social media or, some sort of maybe they're, well-known in the community, speaking about it, I think Masonry does a bad job of standing up and going, no, that's not us. That's ridiculous. Some of the stuff is funny. Some of the conspiracy theories are kind of funny. So you kind of go, all right, we'll let that one just roll because It's so ridiculous. It's kind of hilarious. But when, you have actors like Robert De Niro and Leonardo DiCaprio. I don't know, they didn't write it, so it's not their fault, portraying something so outlandish and so ridiculous. And I know there's artistic components to, when things are written, but Masonry, everything about Masonry is showing the world how a good of a person you can be. And when you do a specific attack like that, where it's so blatantly wrong that it can actually do damage to the fraternity without saying anything, I think Masonry does a poor job in standing up. And that's kind of like where us not having a centralized, grandmaster of everything, that's kind of where that comes from. There's no Grand Lodge of the whole world to stand up.
No
and
liaison to it.
Right. You'd have to get every
rep.
Grand Lodge, to kind of stand together and go, come on, this is not right.
Well, let me ask you one thing. When you say attack, what, in your opinion, because there are fraternities that do kind of fall into that practice of hazing members that we've seen through the news. I don't belong to any, but you've seen through, documentaries or whatnot, that certain fraternities do partake in hazing rituals like that. Why does Masonry opt against that and building that brother-to-brother trust?
Because that's the biggest part of you growing as a person. You saying that you're supposed to trust the other brothers in that room. There's nothing more of a breakdown in trust than being paddled like that.
Harassment.
Yeah. Yes, there are Greek fraternities. That's a part of it, but that's known, when you're going into it. I was in a Greek fraternity. I'm not going to talk about what we did. Every fraternity and sorority's got their own thing, but you know what you're going to be in for when you go to pledge beforehand. Masonry does not condone or even kind of sell anything along those lines. So it's supposed to be a mental exercise, a spiritual exercise in growing as a person.
Right.
There shouldn't be capital. It can't be anything more against what Masonry is about than something like that.
Right. Building trust in a brother. And, you have a certain secret veil over what Masonry is. There's so much of it out there that's kind of what protects it. Right. So now when you're hoodwinked, if you will, you have to go through the degrees to kind of know what's actually happening, because there's so much of it out there. You can go into a Barnes and Nobles and you can buy a Duncan's ritual and read it, and it's still not close to what actually happens. But when you have something in Hollywood that's portrayed where you have hazing like that and the belittling of a brother, or a brother feels like it's his duty to do that to you, and he's announcing himself as a Mason. It's not for the viewer to kind of interpret. They're blatantly saying, I'm a 32nd degree Mason, and then he goes about punishing this brother. Again, I feel we don't do anything. We don't do as much as we should as a fraternity to defend the fraternity. We kind of just look the other way. But in essence, if that was your name in a job place or workplace, and something like that was happening, it would be your duty to defend it. No?
Yeah, absolutely. You wouldn't allow someone to soil your good name,
right?
And I mean, listen, it's every Mason should look at that scene and go, you know what? Like, I wear a square and compass ring. I wear a square and compass hat. Like, I don't want the world to think this is what this guy, this is the type of character this person emulates.
That's what you guys go through?
Right. When every Mason does the amazing work that they do in charitable ways, in their community, with their family, and they work very hard for their lodge, for their community, for their families, to show how good of a person they are, for it to just be stripped away for artistic, purposes in a movie. It's not like it's a fictional, going back to what you said, it's not like it's a fictional lodge and it's not called the Freemasons and he comes up and he says, I am some other, like whatever, and it's not a real thing, and it kind of like resembles a Masonic lodge or an Oddfellows lodge or some, it could be kind of like ambiguous,
Right.
it could be kind of anything, but the fact that he says that, like specifically, I'm a 32nd degree Mason, that should upset Masons around the world and say that's not fair. That's
I would almost be inclined to find out.
would it be any different if you said it like you said earlier? I am a Knights of Columbus.
Right.
I'm a Rotarian. Or
Yeah.
I'm a Protestant. Like, let's go even further. Like into religions. If there's some sort of like ridiculous thing that they start saying, like they would piss those groups off.
Of course.
All the groups around the world that do good things.
Because there's an integrity, especially in an organization like we have, and then you have concordant bodies like the Shrine and all the good work that they do.
Mm-hmm.
You almost take some sting out of it. But I'm almost inclined to do some research and find out who produced that scene. I guarantee you he was NPD'd on dues or something, because the accuracy and the setup of the lodge is accurate.
Oh yeah, it's extremely accurate. It could very well have been just shot in a lodge, and they didn't realize what they were allowing them to do. There's some Masonic lodge buildings that are no longer Masonic buildings that, they could film in that
Right.
are privately owned. There's the Masonic in Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
It's the Detroit Masonic Temple. It's a private organization now.
Yeah.
But lodges do meet there. I don't know if you ever heard this story.
Mm-hmm.
So, the singer from the White Stripes, the band?
No.
Really? You don't know?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, so the singer of the White Stripes apparently was like the purchaser or the savior of the Detroit Masonic Temple.
Mm-hmm.
It's a venue now that they do concerts at and stuff. So apparently he had like when the White Stripes were new, they had some of their first concerts there when they were like getting big. And his mother, I guess, was Eastern Star, and he remembers how all the good things that she did and what she was involved in, and he had such fond memories of the Detroit Masonic Temple, which is an enormous building.
That's actually the
that
first
he
building,
actually
yeah.
that he actually decided to come in and save it and allow the lodges to still meet
Really?
there.
Wow.
Because he knew that how good Masonry was, and there's a business aspect of it. He's got to make some money, but he did carve a space for them to always be able to meet there.
Yeah, to save an asset like that. I mean, I know at one point that was one of the first buildings in the Western Hemisphere to have air conditioning, like central air.
Really?
They used to bring in blocks of ice and in the basement, and they would pump air conditioning to that building. It
That's
was
crazy.
Scientifically, like second to none in that part of the world at that point in time.
I wonder when they built that. I had to look up the exact day that they built
It's got to be turn of the century.
the Detroit Masonic Temple. It's. You think it's turn of the century?
I would think so.
It's old. I know that. Let's see.
We're creating a spot for our sponsors, so if you ever want to chime in at this time.
Yeah, but here, man, like if somebody attacked you personally, you would react to it. Like not like attacked you, like just insulting you for the sake of insulting you.
That's how I view it, as an attack.
Yeah, it's insulting your character for no reason. It should upset you. Now people go, oh, sticks and stones won't break my bones. But you know what? When you put a lot of effort, and you use this term a lot, your brand, but for me, it's just your reputation. It's your name. It's if you put everything you can, and you're giving your all to something, and somebody with just a quick comment, can destroy it all and swipe at it because they have the platform, it's upsetting.
It goes back to these two Goliaths in the music movie industry. I'm sorry, Leonardo DiCaprio and Robert De Niro. This is gonna get views, and then I'm somebody who, and as well as you are, we wear that square and compass as a prideful emblem. I try to live up to the teachings, and I'm very proud to be part of this fraternity. So to see something like that, it's almost it's so distasteful for Hollywood, in my opinion, because the size of this fraternity, and it's worldwide, there's a brother out there that might have been interested in this fraternity, or there's brothers currently in this fraternity, and there could be anybody from presidents to regular workers, and then you see something like that, and the first comment you get is, "Oh, that's what you went through." You know, it's shameful in a way to see something like that allowed in movies, because again, it's disrespectful to the fraternity, in my opinion.
Okay, so here's the details on it. So Jack White from the White Stripes, his mom was an usher there in the building.
Okay.
And worked there, and he recently paid their taxes because they couldn't pay the taxes on it.
Okay.
It was like $140 something thousand that he paid to save the building.
That's actually not bad. Did you see when it was built?
1920.
1920. Okay. A lot of things went on around that
I mean,
time.
we say like, oh, it's only 1920. Dude, it was 103 years ago.
Yeah. No, but if you look at a lot of the prestigious buildings that went up and came down around that time, it's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing.
It's
the
the
Levelers
amount.
Club.
Yeah, dude, the amount of it almost I can't conceive the amount how much this country was flourishing, that there was enough free capital to build something like that. Think about it right now. Now, Masons in the 21st century in the United States, okay? Yes, we've had our rich and our famous brothers, but that's not like Masonry. That's not the body of Masonry. And we've said that before. Like, yes, we've got the George Washingtons, we've got the the Benjamin Franklins, we've got all these famous people, the Henry Fords, but the meat and potatoes of Freemasonry is just guys like me and you.
Right.
Just normal people who have normal lives, who get involved in their communities and their lodges, and, live a middle-class existence. I try to think, okay, our lodge, we have, I think, like I looked it up once, the fourth or fifth most members in the entire state of New York right now. And we're like 189 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
If every brother paid $500, I don't I couldn't imagine building a building, let alone the Detroit Masonic Temple. I don't know if you could, with the entire state of New York, collect enough money from brothers where brothers would be able to handle it. So what do you think right now, with the way the economy is, a middle-class brother, you think they'd be able to donate? If they knew they were going to build something like we're going to build the best building we can, how much money do you think a brother can get together if you gave him a year? I'd say maybe $100.
Yeah, $100-$200.
Okay. There's not enough brothers in the state to come up with enough money to build something even as close to as big and as palatial as like the Detroit Masonic Temple, or even the Indianapolis Scottish Rite Cathedral, which is insane. That would cost $1 billion to build something like that now. You couldn't, even if you quadrupled 10 times the number of membership in the state, I don't think you'd be able to come up with enough money to do that. It's crazy.
It's a dying art, though. We live in a microwave society. You see it a lot of times in the memberships, and in fraternities, and some of these clubs. I know people that are in some of these railroad clubs, these Lino clubs, and it's hard. You have the older group of guys who have been there for a longer time, and to get somebody new, the instant gratification that society faces nowadays, it's hard to even find somebody dedicated enough to say, you know what, I want to see it happen, and I'm so I've bought so into this idea that I'm gonna see it through. I think the Lincoln Memorial, right? The obelisk in
That's the
Washington,
Washington
Monument. I'm sorry. The amount of Grand Lodges around the world that donated pieces of stone to that. You know, it's we're such a unit that really the sky is the limit. But to get guys on board, I think you have to improve the Masonic experience. I remember being in the fan room, and I say this, you know, I've said this before. I was going through one of the filing cabinets, and I found a folder. When I opened up the folder, it was a lady who had donated $15,000 to the lodge. And, you know, she gave $10,000 to the lodge to do with it as she saw fit, as we saw fit, and then $5,000 was to put flowers out on her grave every Mother's Day and Easter. I think to myself, what kind of place was this that she felt that she had to leave it to continue to replicate that experience for the members? And also, are we doing our due diligence to recreate that? And when you have buildings like our building or some of these other buildings, because Masonry blew up in that time, now you're forced to focus on how to maintain the assets, which before were the members. Now it's the buildings and a lot of the other things inside those buildings. Now you're maintaining that, what to do with it, how to paint this, how to maintain it, who's getting this, who's getting that. So now you're managing those assets as opposed to creating the experience for the members who are in exchange going to create new assets, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. It's just, what I was really getting at was I can't like imagine how good, like how flourishing the country was, where there was enough free money around, even with donations and work and like that's not. I'm sorry, we've all like done work around the lodge. We've all found like, all right, which brother's an electrician or a plumber, and we could fix this, that. You're not getting brothers help to go build a building like those buildings, like the Detroit Masonic Temple. Like I'll show a picture of it. Is like a city block.
Yeah,
it's insane. You know, it's incredible.
The dollar was worth a lot more back then too.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's sad that society has moved away from fraternal organizations in general, whether it be us, whether it be the Rotarians, the Lions.
Do you think also
the Elks? It's in general, society has moved away from spending time with other human beings and just having that instant gratification of like a TikTok or an Instagram, a post, a moment, a snapshot in that person's life, and not experiencing their life with them.
I think even speaking to themselves, I mean, we look at society today and visual stimulation isn't worshipped as much as it was back in the day. Look at the buildings that are put up. Even a municipal building like Grand Central Terminal or what Penn Station used to look like. There was that Art Deco, aspect of it where as you're walking, you're looking around, you're looking up. Everybody's looking down at a cell phone. All the buildings look like glass boxes. They look like Legos. You don't find people decorating the sky with Empire State Building or the Chrysler Building or some of these other buildings that are all throughout the city where the stonework and the symbology, like a gargoyle. The symbology of having a gargoyle on the side of a building, and it's functional. A lot of times it was a drain, but the gargoyle is supposed to be scarier than evil, to keep evil out, right? All of those aspects that went into building a building and protecting it and stuff like that, that's gone. You don't see that anymore. It's whatever's cost efficient, throw it up as fast as possible, on to the next one. And you have a sheet. All right, pick one of these 5 buildings. Designs,
Right. Do you like square? Do you like rectangle? Yeah. Do you like taller rectangle?
Or cubed?
Or do you want it out of glass or glass or glass?
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess it's just a style of art, architecture in what we're living in. I don't know if it's a cost thing. It probably partially is.
But I mean, even like the checkerboard floor. even the way, like the Colosseum, the way that the steps were spaced was all in line with the anatomy of a person and how they walked. I think still to this day, for the amount of people that the Colosseum holds, there's not a stadium that can evacuate as many people, because walking out of the Coliseum was second nature. We're walking out of a Citi Field or Yankee Stadium, you got to concentrate on your steps if it's packed.
Yeah.
If you're running, there's a constant which slows people down. So I don't. I mean, I understand that there's people, and it's almost like the medical field, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have a doctor, then you have a specialist, and you have a specialist, and there's another specialist, and then with buildings, it's kind of like that too. It's like, okay, I'll do the outside. All right, this company will do the windows, and we're following the design of a guy who's never built anything before. Not to go against engineers, but doing stuff from the office isn't the same as actually putting a building up.
Yeah.
Like being an iron worker for a couple years, and then you got promoted, and then you understand the nature of putting things up in different, areas. But
Do you think we're going through kind of like a phase of very minimalistic type of architecture? Like you're saying, people in their houses try to keep everything very clean, very open concept with everything.
right, it's like music. I mean,
My point is, like, does an open concept building, does it draw? See, I've heard it both ways. Does it draw people together, or does it keep people apart?
I think it keeps people apart.
Why is that?
Because, again, like I was alluding to, music nowadays, you have very simple beats, very simple music, where back in the day you'd have an orchestra and you'd have a nice... I think when it comes to buildings, you can have all of those aspects, but it's knowing how to put it all together. Open concept is lazy. It looks clean, but it creates less of a space to hide, right? So a lot of times people may avoid that open space. Go to Central Park. How many people are on the lawn?
Yeah.
I think people naturally want to observe, and being able to sit in a theater, on the cusp, at the edge and stuff like that, it allows you the opportunity to see but not be seen.
Mm-hmm.
So I think open concept doesn't bring... It's lazy architecture, in my opinion.
Also, it doesn't delineate specific purpose,
Right.
for specific spaces. It's one thing to have... Now, some open concept is practical, meaning I only have so much square footage.
Nice taste.
I got to fit everything I can into it. But the fact of having something small and intimate where people are sitting together, like if you have a living room, but the living room is also the kitchen, and it's also the dining room, and it's also like, yeah, you're in the same room, but like you're not seeing that person's facial expressions. You're not right on top of them. You're not experiencing like kind of their vibe.
Yeah.
When you have a smaller, older house, like like the living room was the living room. It was there was a smaller room where that's where everyone spent time and sat. And then the dining room, that's where everyone sat and dined. And then the kitchen was like just a workspace. The kitchen's become more of like a, everything, everything's the kitchen now.
Do you think it's going to get worse? Now, I've seen there's college classes that look into human interaction. And I think that's also why podcast has kind of taken off. People want to see humans interact with each other. But as we get into a society where everybody's kind of in their own bubble, right? I had a cable guy one time come in, and he's like, the TV in the living room is going to be a thing of the past. Everybody's going to have tablets. Everybody's isolated. As people come further and further away from seeing people interact, that art and how to tend to those experiences are going to fade away as well.
Mm-hmm.
So what's that going to do to architecture? What's that going to do to open space? What's that going to do to, to society, really? Because people are going to just start making things for what they feel is comfortable instead of breeding human interaction. What do you think about that?
Well, we've been doing that for quite a while now with the internet. But I think that's why Masonry is starting to have a little bit of a pushback now. It's kind of like coming back a little bit with younger people, is now they start to feel that yearning to actually speak and be around, another human being in person. That's something that died when the internet age came, with MySpace and Facebook and all that stuff. Everyone's like, oh, I could interact everything from, at the time, it was either just your laptop and then it was just your phone.
Yeah.
But now I think people are starting to yearn for that interaction with another person, that experience, with another human being, like, and experiencing their life with them, and we can, Masonry has been providing that forever. We've always been there. It's just, I think, instead of the social media can be so toxic, and every organization has its headaches. It's not like Masonry is completely, absolved of having its own headaches. It's any organization of people are going to have hiccups, but, you learn more and grow more when you're talking to somebody face to face. How many times does it happen where you've sent a text and you go, oh, that could be read wrong?
Oh, yeah. Lazy. Yep.
It's the inflection or however you read it, or it's the mood of the person, that you sent it to, that when they're reading it, it could be read like really crappy, or it could be read really well. And how do you get your emotion across correctly like that?
Also, too, I think it goes back to, again, reading the room. You're absolutely right. But how many times you see accountability is almost lost, too, in this internet era, where you can say something, just delete it and like it never happened, or delete that friend, or just change the surroundings. Where in real life, you can read body language. Is this person ready to receive what I'm trying to say? Did this person actually understand what I was delivering? It comes back to, like you said, it's lazy communication, lazy receiving of information, not wanting to say what did you mean by that. Even that's lost nowadays. Well, this is what you meant. That's not what I said. Yeah, but this is how I understood it. I think Masonry helps out a lot with that, because, for example, we've seen disagreements. We've seen disagreements in Lodge where one brother has said, this brother was around when this happened. And then another brother said, hey, listen, that came out wrong. Well, that's not how I meant it. And then that brother went and apologized. If that was an internet exchange,
oh God, forget it.
It would have that could have bred years of beef, as the kids nowadays would say. And then you would have lost friends. Stuff like that splits lodges. It breeds unhealthy environments. I mean, look at election years, what they do to certain families when you're on Facebook arguing about this person or that person and political views. What does that do?
What kind of brings it to kind of, we didn't really touch on. I kind of wanted to start the first episode of this season, our second season, which I'm proud that we made into a second season. And thank you to everybody who listens to us. Our podcast is a bit different, I think, for Masonic podcasts, is that we kind of just go with it. So if anyone saw our posts where, I'm reading from Brother Teddy Roosevelt's, one of his speeches, The Man in the Arena, that's kind of where this conversation's kind of, I'm glad it went actually naturally. And I think I kind of want it to be the theme of this season is the man in the arena. How do Masons and how does a man deal with the world around him head on?
Yeah.
And not just kind of just brushing it off. Going back to what we just said about having that interaction face to face with a brother, not hiding in another place, in another room, actually putting yourself in uncomfortable situations so you can grow and not avoiding it. If you don't live it, if you're not in it, you're never going to grow. And I like that about Masonry when you apply it out in the real world, is you're forced to make those decisions And if you avoid them, you won't grow as a person, you won't grow as a Mason.
Right. It's struggle where character is built. But, you know, like you said, this podcast is really tailored on how Masons meet, act, and part. There are historical aspects of it where we might speak on certain facts or certain interpretations of ritual, but really I feel that this podcast is tailored to show a greater whole how Masons coexist. How do we meet, act, and part?
Mm-hmm.
You know, how when you meet a Mason, it's usually somebody of service. What can I do for you? And when we act, even if a brother was to error somewhere, it's my duty, it's your duty to protect that brother's name, protect his honor.
Yeah.
You know, scold him not scold, but correct in private and build. We make good men better, not good men bitter.
Yeah.
I say that all the time. But that's definitely the main drive for this podcast is how we interpret current events, past events, how we interact, how we dissect information, deliver information. And as we're doing that, we're in the arena making ourselves better because by any means, we're not right. Professionals at this.
Well, that's kind of why I brought up the whole
right.
man in the arena thing is like you just said, it forces you to deal with that interaction in a place, in a lodge. You can deal with those uncomfortable situations where in regular life, there might be a lot more at stake, you know. Meaning like you're interacting with a boss or a coworker that can go south and get yourself in a lot of trouble. So you learn in lodge and you learn amongst your brothers because you have that baseline of trust that I can work through how I would handle this situation with them knowing that your best intentions are I'm trying to get through this and learn how to handle this so that when you go out into the real world, you don't run from it.
Right. One of my favorite sayings in lodge, and you've heard it so many times, is, you know, charge my head, not my heart.
Mm-hmm.
My intentions were pure. My character is pure, but the decision may have been maybe misinterpreted emotion that I viewed, or just, you know, emotion as in regards to logic, but you have to welcome those things, right? Your greatest opponent also, in a scale, measures how worthy you are of a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in Masonry, whether it's learning a degree, performing a degree or in a lecture, getting better, you know, failing at something says you tried. It's so important. And in a Masonic lodge, it's almost a controlled experiment. How is this going to work in the real world?
Right. Yeah, that's exactly. it's our quarry, right?
Right.
That's where we go to work, and if you make a mistake, you can make a mistake there because it's not going out into the building quite yet.
No.
You know, it's the building being either your spiritual building or the building being the world. You know, you could work on your skills there amongst other more skilled craftsmen that can teach you. Yeah. That's where you learn things. That's where you learn how to, you know, coexist with other men in the world around you. And, you know, for us, it's trying to show the world that it's not a nefarious thing, and it's you know, it's going back to the beginning of this whole thing. It's near and dear to a lot of us, and when you attack it, whether it's intentional or not, you know, it upsets us, and we should speak out on it because there is a lot of good work being done by Masons, whether it's active for somebody else or for themselves. And for someone to have a bad impression of Masonry because of a movie, again, whether it's intentional or not, and miss out on it because they may have a preconceived notion of it that is completely false, That's a sad thing.
Yeah, not only that, but I mean to see somebody go through that, and then you see, as a Mason, you're like, I didn't go through that, and that's not. We don't do that stuff.
Except for the goat.
But if you stop at every dog that barks, you're never gonna get anywhere. So you don't have to defend Masonry to every Illuminati believer or every conspiracy theorist. But when you have something,
But did you get your Illuminati card? You didn't get your Illuminati card?
no, I didn't.
Renewed yet?
No, I didn't.
Like,
I did, and I didn't get the $500 that they were supposed to
I
give me
know.
too.
They're always behind me. It's crazy. For somebody who's always controlling the world,
Yeah.
that's my joke. I always tell people oh my God, the Masons, they control the world. I'm like, dude, if the Masons control the world, would we be paying property taxes on our buildings? Come on, we wouldn't have to worry about that kind of stuff. Every lodge in the entire country and in the entire world would be like a palatial lodge where we didn't have to worry about anything, and every brother was showing up in a Mercedes Benz.
Yeah.
Come on, and everyone's like, oh, you're just a low level Mason. Bro, we've all been to our Grand Lodge. We have a very beautiful Grand Lodge building, but it's a gigantic office building with some beautiful lodge rooms in it.
Right.
It's not a castle. But a lot of Grand Lodges are fairly modest. They're beautiful buildings, but they're not, insane Grand Lodges. It's I think people just like to they get lazy, and they want to think. It's almost like romantic that there is some sort
That's
of
it.
crazy,
Yeah, the conspiracy, right? That's,
And I'm not. I have my own beliefs about there being people that run stuff, but. To take the easy way out and just say it's all Freemasons, it's just lazy thinking. If they wanted to do that, they want you to think it's something as blatant as Freemasons, or Illuminati that don't exist. It's much more reasonable to think that it's just a bunch of rich people that could just buy and do whatever they want.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back again, lazy information. You got to give it to some of these conspiracy theorists that sit in their basement.
Oh, the mental gymnastics that some of these guys have to go through.
To connect
it's
all
almost
that
like
stuff.
the flat earth people, which, Danny, please hashtag flat earthers, because we'll start that whole psychotic thing.
Or if it flies, it spies.
Oh, birds aren't real. We've done that before.
Yep.
Birds and turtles aren't real. But, yeah. Listen, I'm glad we got rolling again. I know we were kind of knocking off the cobwebs. We got Brother Jimmy on his way here, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, so we'll get him into the next episode. I think this is a good place to stop. I'm glad that we, got sitting back down and got going again on season 2. It's gonna be a good year. I'm excited, and we're gonna try to do some new things. Try to get some kind of interaction with our listeners. Try to do some lives with some other podcasters, some other Masonic podcasters. We've got a couple surprises in store.
Yeah,
me and you.
Got a couple brothers too from the district that are making a lot of noise out there. They're leaving a little bit of them in the Masonic structure of the district, and in New York, for that example. Well, for lack of better words. So I'm very excited to speak to those brothers. It's gonna be a good season. It's gonna be a good year, and we kind of understand how to do this now.
Yeah, I think we're doing okay.
Yeah.
We've always said we started this off just so me and you could have some fun, and
hanging out.
if the only two people to listen to it is me and you, we would have been happy. But it is exciting. I'm excited about the people we've got coming this year that we're gonna interview, and the grotto.
The grotto.
Oh, we'll talk about that with Jimmy.
Yeah.
The grotto that we're starting. It's exciting stuff. It's going to be a good year. So that is episode 1 of the 4th part podcast. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And we'll see you on the next episode. Safe travels.
Happy New Year.
And Happy New Year. 2024. How many times are you going to write 2023 on stuff?
I don't write. That's great.